Hi, in this video we're going to be using Power Automate to generate our weekly HSE report. Now we're going to use data that comes from Power BI, and we're going to also use calls to OpenAI models to generate the actual report itself, and also turn the tabular data like the description, the date, the coded categories into these incident narratives and something that's a little bit more human readable in terms of analysis report. Now, on top of that, we're also going to distribute the report using an email, and the email is going to contain a table here that's going to be a summary of the number of each incident category, and there's going to be a link to the actual report itself so that it can be downloaded. Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. So to start with, I just want to quickly cover the underlying data that's going to be used to drive the creation of this weekly HSE report. And here it is here. So I've just created a really basic Power BI dashboard or report here. And this PBIX file, which I'm going to leave a link below in the description so that you can go and download it yourself, has also got data that's related to SECI backlog, it's got data related to our production, it's got information related to threats. And the intention here would be to create an all-encompassing weekly report that you can send related to all factors related to operations. But I've just focused on HSE incidents for this one here. Now, in the report, you've got the list of events across the top here with the total here and then the split by different categories. And then we've got this tabular data here. It's a table of the time of the event and the date, the category, the incident number, the description. We've got who reported it. So there's a lot of information here. Now, some information related to the root cause analysis, the 5 whys, the status, and the key actions that were taken. Now, typically what happens is somebody's got to go and take this information if it wants to be, if you want to create a higher level senior management report and create a narrative around it. Okay, create a narrative that says exactly what happened. Now, in this example here, we're going to take this information and we're going to feed it to an OpenAI model, and we're going to ask OpenAI with some prompt engineering to generate a report narrative, okay, for each of these different incidents. So it's going to glue together the information that's contained in each of these records and make it something that's a bit more human readable. So we can see here we've got the list of, or the summary table here with the number of incidents, and then inside each one of these we've used the OpenAI to generate the incident description using some of the information related to the incident number, the category and the actual description, and then create these narratives. Now this is far more akin to what an HSE professional would do if they were creating a report. It talks you through the actual incident itself, the event response, the root cause analysis, just rather than giving a list of 5 whys. It's actually added a little bit of information here and made it a bit more readable. And the other thing we're going to add in here is we're going to suggest or ask OpenAI to suggest some follow-on questions that somebody reading this report, typically an ops manager or an HSE manager, or some other senior manager, might ask in relation to understanding more about the incident and perhaps filling any of the gaps that's not already covered in the actual mini report. Now we're going to get this report to go through and create this. Now we're going to get Power Automate to go through the list of records that's in Power BI and create these mini reports for each one of these. Okay, so at the end of the day, we've got a nicely formatted report that is going to be something that's a bit more readable. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to log into Power Automate. The URL is make.powerautomate.com, and we're going to go and you'll be at the home page, and we're just going to go and create a new flow here. Now you will need a premium license because we use an HTTP action to call the OpenAI large language model, so you'll need to purchase one of them if you want to follow along with this. Now in here we've got different options here for different triggers, and this one here is going to be a scheduled cloud flow. So we want this to run on a regular basis, so I'll set this up to run every Monday morning. So we first of all enter the flow name, and then we say when we want it to start. So we'll start it as of next week. We're going to run it. We'll change it from 10 a.m. We'll make it 6 a.m. and then we're going to run this every 1 week. Okay, and then we're going to run it on a Monday. And then we're just going to say create. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is go and actually get the data that we're going to use to drive the actual report. So let's go in and insert an action here. And we're going to go and search for a Power BI action, and it's going to be to query a data set or the semantic model. So if we enter that here, we can see that it's come up with this different options here, but the first one that we've got, which is the one, is to run a query against a dataset. Okay, now it's going to ask us for the workspace in the dataset. Now you do need to make sure that you've actually published the actual PBX file up to the Power BI service, and that the user that's logged in here has got access to that Power BI service. And then we go in here and choose operations, which is the one that I've published it to, and then it's an operations report. And then we've got to get the query text here. Now the query text can be extracted from the performance analyzer in the Power BI desktop file. So let's go across to that. So we're across here in the actual PBX file, and we're going to go to view, and we're going to go to performance analyzer, and then we're going to press the start recording, and then we're going to press refresh visuals. Okay, so it's going to refresh these visuals here. We can see that the two visuals that we've got that we're interested in here is the HSE performance and the HSE incidence, which is this and this. So we're going to open up the HSE performance because this is the summary that we want first of all, and then we're going to go and copy the query. Okay, so it's as simple as that. And then we're going to go back into our Power Automate flow, and in here we're going to go and paste the query. Okay, just paste it as it is, and then we're just going to go and save this. Okay, so you can't save it until you've added at least one action, so let's do that. And then we're going to go and add another action for within here to go and get the actual list of Power BI, the list of incidents from Power BI. So it's same action again. Okay, operations report, and then I'm going to go back into the PBX file, and then I'm going to open up the HSE incidents, and I'm going to go and copy that query, and I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, so it's a much bigger query, but it's fine, just paste it in, we don't need to worry too much about that, and then minimize it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it, and just then test it to make sure that we're actually pulling back the data. Now before we do that, actually I'm going to just change these names to make them a little bit more readable. In fact, test it first. So click on test here manually. Now we need to test it manually because it's an automated cloud flow that's only going to run once a week. So we can just test it manually, and then click on run, and then click on done, and this should happen quite quickly. Okay, so we can see these little ticks here, and what we can do is we can click on each one of these. We can see the inputs here, but we're interested in the outputs. Now, what makes it a little bit easier to read is if we just go to the body, and in here we can see it's clearly bringing back this data here. Okay, so that data there, 7, 1, 1, 2, and 3 is the same as the data here. Now, it's not that data there that's actually querying. Remember, it's the actual data that's been published up to the Power BI service. So just remember, if you have actually refreshed the report and you're thinking, why has it not got the data, then you will need to republish it to the Power BI service. Okay, and if I click on this one, just to make sure it's come through, and we can see that the rows have got the incident description, the category, and it's all been populated, which is great. So that's working so far. Great stuff. Okay, so once you're happy with that, if you click on the edit button here, and that's going to take us back to the edit flow view. Right. Okay, so now we're ready to add a new action here. Okay, so next we've got to add an action to actually go and set up a request to the OpenAI model. So to do that, we're going to go in here and add a new action, and we're going to search for HTTP, and then we're going to choose this HTTP action here. Okay, so in here we've got some parameters that we need to put in, and we can get those across at the OpenAI website, the documentation website. Now, it is worth mentioning that I've created a comprehensive video on how to set this up. Now, I'm going to really just cover it at a really high level here. And again, I'll leave a link below if you're interested in learning more about this. However, what I've done is I've navigated to this section here, which is under the create chart completions. And this is the URL here. And I've changed this here from Python, I think is the default, to this curl here. And this is the information we need to actually enter into the actual action in Power Automate. So the first thing we need is this URL here. So that's going to get pasted into the top part here. Then the method is going to be post. Okay, now we've got the header, key and value here. So there's a couple of header key value pairs we've got to add in, and these are here. So content type is going to be application slash JSON, and then we've got authorization is going to be Bather, and then we're going to go and actually enter the reference to the API key that we're going to use to call this model. Okay, so I've just copied those in, and I've put the text in here, Bather, and then space, and then I'm going to go and actually create a compose statement that's going to store the actual API key. Okay, so to get the API key, then you go across to the side here and click on API keys, and then you just create on a new secret key here. Give it a name, and let's call it Power Automate Create Weekly Report, and then create a secret key. Okay, and that's the key there. So you can copy that. Now, this is a one and done, so once you copy it, you do need to use it. You won't get a chance to copy it again. So just bear that in mind and then click on done. Now, rather than actually paste this key directly into here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top here, and I'm going to click on a new action, and I'm going to create a compose statement. So a compose is just really a holder for some text. Okay, so I'm going to paste this into here. Okay, and then in here I'll put the description. I'm going to call this, okay, and now this, you'll need to create your own key. This one will get deactivated after this video, but this is going to just hold this key. Now we can go back into the HTTP request here, and we've got Bather and then a space. Now remember to leave that space, and then we're going to click on this dynamic content here. We've only got one thing here, which is the output of this compose key, and that is going to be the key that we've got in here. So it just means that if we're going to start using this multiple times, which we will have multiple calls to this OpenAI HTTP in different actions, then we can just refer to it in one place here. And it's going to be easy to manage it if we need to replace it or whatever. Okay, so that's that bit done, and then the final bit here is this body request here. So let's go back to the OpenAI documentation. Okay, so we're going to copy this bit here. So from that curly bracket right down to this curly bracket here, and we're going to paste that into the other section. Okay, and we're just going to save it here. Okay, so let's go now, and we are going to change the user message here. Okay, so rather than say hello, we're going to say something like, okay, just so we can test it. And I'm going to go and press on the test button there, or save it first actually, and then I'm going to test it manually. Okay, we can see it's taking a little time just to carry out this HTTP request. Right, now here we have it. So if we scroll down to the outputs, we'll see that the output of the body, and yeah, here it is here. So basically we know that we've got some text here because this is the content of the response. A great HAC environmental reports should include the following elements. Okay, executive summary, blah blah blah, introduction, findings, etc. So we know that it's actually going and connecting to the OpenAI model. Okay, so if we go back to the report, the next thing, or one of the first things we want to do is we want to actually create this table here. Now, for creating this report, the output needs to be in HTML, and that's how we can get these headings here to be formatted and to get these bolds and get this table, etc. So we're going to go and take the Power BI output, which is the list of these metrics here that we took from the Power BI report, and we're going to go and actually generate an HTML table that we can then embed in this report later on. Okay, so I'm going to go into here. I'm going to add another compose action here, and this text here is going to be a prompt that we're going to use to feed into this large language model call here to actually format the text as a nicely formatted table that we can then embed into the actual document, and also we're going to use it for the email as well. Okay, so this is the prompt that's going to get passed across to the large language model, and I've added in this here. So we've put instructions. Please create an HTML model containing two columns. The first column is a KPI name and the second column is a KPI values. There's no requirement to create column headers, just create row and header values. The first column should contain the KPI names and the second should contain the values. Use the following mappings, and here they are here. So number of incidents as total number of incidents, count of major injuries, count of minor injuries, etc., etc. So this information here, this is the actual data that comes across from the actual query, the response from the query. So if I go and look at that, we'll just save this just now. And we need to go back here. and we'll just look at one of the previous responses that we've got here, or the information from one of the runs that we've had in the past from this flow here. And if I open this up, and if we go to this show raw outputs, we can see that this is what we've actually, the output here. So this is the measure name. So counter major incidents, counter major minor incidents, etc., etc. Now we don't want that to be what's displayed in the table. We want something that's a bit more readable. So that's why I've done that mapping as part of the prompt, because the large language model can do that mapping for us. Okay, so these are the different mappings, and then format the output as an HTML table using HTML tags. This table will be added to an HTML document, so there's no need for other document level tags. So we don't need to put the header tag and other tags, we just want a pure table with the HTML table tags. Right, and that's fine. So let's go and we'll just change this compose statement to be something that's a bit easier to recognize. Okay, so let's go back into our call here, and I've also updated this bit here. Now this is a system level message, and it's basically a company. It's an underlying message that sets an intention for, or sets a standard instruction for the large language model. So rather than just being you're a helpful assistant, I've actually updated this to say you're an expert in creating HTML code, because that's what we're asking it to do. That's the job we're asking it to do here, is format that table as an HTML table. I've just realised I never explained how to do this. So to put this this section in here, which is the prompt, we go to this dynamic content, and then we're going to get the compose statement, which is a prompt from the create KPI summary table. And then this section here, I'll just delete that, which is the actual data. We're going to go to dynamic content, and we're going to get the output from this action here to go and actually query the metrics in the Power BI report, and it's going to be this first table rows. Okay, that's the two bits of dynamic content that you need to add into there. Right, okay, so let's save this and we'll test it. Okay, so it succeeded. Took it 3 seconds to actually execute that, or 2.7. And if we click on here, let's go down and see what we've got. That was the original prompt. And here's the output. And if we go in here, we can see that we've got this table here with the HTML tags here for the different rows and the different cells. And that looks pretty good. Right, so that's that done. The next thing we're going to do is go and get this body here. Okay, so it's only this that we need. Okay, this is only the thing. This is only content we need. So we need to be able to take this actual output body here. We'll just move up a little bit further, and we need to be able to parse it into individual columns that we can then pull into the report. Now we don't need all of this other stuff like the ID, the object, all of this information here. What we need is this contents here. So first of all, we're going to go and copy this because we'll need that in a second. So copy the contents of this body. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down here and add a new action. So we need to go edit first, add a new action. And then we're going to just put in here parse. And there's another data operation called parse JSON. Right, now there's an option here to use sample payload to generate schema. That's exactly what we want. And now that body content from the output of the large language model, we're just going to paste that into here. Click on done. And then we are going to then use this as a template. So you can see it's actually created this nice JSON template here that's going to be used as the schema based on that example that we gave it. And then in here we're going to add some dynamic content, and it's going to be the body output from here. Okay, and then we'll just save that. And we'll just call it something recognizable. And then we'll do that, save and test. Okay, so here's the input here, and we're interested in the output. I'm just going to click on this show raw data here. And we can see that the content has been assigned this this section here, which is the actual HTML table, which is exactly what we need. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to append that to a string. Okay, so when we're actually creating the actual file, we need to make sure that we've got a string that we can actually use that's going to contain just the contents of this the contents of the contents, which is what we want in here. So let's just go into add a new action. Go back to edit. So this is a two-step process. So we're going to add a new action here, and the first one is to create a variable. Now this is going to be a variable that's going to be something that we can store. So we will open this up a bit, and we want to initialize variable. So the variable name is going to be HTML KPI table. It's going to be a string, and the initial value we're just going to leave it as it is for just now, blank, and then we're going to go and save that. Okay, and then we're going to go and add in a new action here, and this is going to be to append to a string. So we've got this option here, append to string variable, and we're going to go and select the variable we want to append to, which is this one here, HTML table, which is this up here. And then the value that we're going to append is going to be the contents of this output from the JSON HSE KPI HTML table. So we'll go in here, and if we go into this one here and just open up this, and it's this here, content. Okay. Now it's going to put it in a for each because the JSON table structure means that there could be multiple contents. Now, the way we've set this up, it's not going to be the case because we're just going to basically call it once for the chat completion. But if this was a file that was created from a chatbot, for example, there could be multiple examples of a message and response. So the content would be, there could be multiple contents and you need to refer to it using an index. But for this example here, it'll just be the one, but it does recognize that there can be, so it does put in this for each. Right, so let's just tidy that up a little bit. I'm just going to go and change this. Okay, so I've just tidied that up because I noticed there was a bit of a typo there with the HTMLs. It was the HTLMs. But I'll just save that now, and we're going to go and test it. Okay, so here's the output of this this test here, and if we go to this append to string variable HTML KPI table, we can see that the input, well, it's basically a variable, so it doesn't really have an input and output. It's just got an input, and here's the value that it's currently got here. So we can see that it starts with table, and it's got this nicely formatted table HTML here. Okay, so it's great. Okay, so this is back in the Power Automate flow here, and we're just going to do a quick recap as to what we've done so far. So the first thing we did is we set up a trigger here, which is to run every week. We then got a couple of compose statements, one that's going to actually compose the API key that we're going to use. The second that's the actual prompt for creating this summary KPI table. We then went and got the query to pull back the data for the HTML or for the summary HSE information, and then we pull back the query for the actual list of incidents. And then we've done a call to the OpenAI model. We've passed it the prompt, the API key, and this summary data here, and it's generated a table. Okay, now we needed to parse the response here so we could actually isolate the content element to that response. And then we've fed that response into first of all, we initialized a variable, a string variable, and then we fed the response from the content, from the parsed response into this string variable here, and that's given us that nice neat HTML code that we need to later on we're going to feed into a document. Right, so the next stage is to do the same pretty much for this HSE incident list. So let's go and move that down there. So we've got it isolated from this top bit here because they all sort of hang together. Okay, so before we move on to the next section of building the actual flow, I just wanted to go through a bit of logic that we're going to follow because it's different to the first one. The first one was pretty straightforward. It was a fixed set of data. Okay, we knew we were going to pass it the 5 measures, so it's always going to be 5 rows and 2 columns. Okay, so we can deal with that pretty easily. This one here is a little bit different, and that we could actually pass it across. In this example here, we've got, I think, 7 records here, but the next week it could be 2, and then the following week it could be 10. So this, the nature of this is that the rows are unknown. Okay, so the other point here is that we're actually, rather than just using the LLM to format the actual text into HTML, in this example here, we're going to go and actually create a mini report. We're going to go and append, or we're going to mash this information together into a mini report for each incident. And then eventually we're going to go and pull all that together into a document. So here's what we're going to do here. So we've got this here, and that's going to be the query, or the query is going to actually pull back this list of records here. And we're going to go and initialize an HSE incident array variable, and that's going to contain our rows, okay, and the columns. Okay, so it's going to be like a little data table. At the same time, or at the start of this, we're also going to create another variable, okay, another array variable, and it's going to be for storing the responses from the LLM. So that's going to be the actual text that's going to make up the report for each of the different incidents. So we'll get that set up as well. So that's going to be called HSE reports, and then we're going to go and we're going to loop through each of these individually. And for each one of these incidents, so we're going to go to the first one, then the second one, then the third one. We're going to go and we're going to pass it the record, so pass it the information that's stored here. We're going to pass it a prompt, and that's going to get passed into the HTTP call to the large language model. It's going to go and process that prompt, and it's going to return a response, which is going to be the information that we need to build the report. And it's going to be all in HTML format and stuff like that, and we'll cover that with a prompt. And then we're going to go and feed that or append that to this array variable here. Okay, so at the end of this process here, this loop, we're going to go and we're going to have an array, and each one of the records in the array, or the rows in the array, is going to be a single column, just the response from the large language model with the HTML for that particular incident. And we're going to have 7 of those. Okay, hopefully it'll become clear once we go into it, but this is going to help you kind of understand hopefully what we're trying to achieve in this next section here. Okay, so let's add an action here, and this is going to be another one of these initializing a variable. Okay, and it's going to be called list of HSE incidents, and the variable name is going to be the same. Let's keep that the same there, and it's going to be an array, and we're going to initialize it with the output from the query for the list of incidents. Okay, so there's only one output here, the first table row, so that makes it quite straightforward for this. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and add another action to initialize the response, and we'll call this HSE reports, and we'll call that HSE reports again, and it's going to be an array, and we're going to leave that value blank for just now. Okay, so we're not going to actually put anything in it. We could do, but we're not going to put anything in it at the moment. So let's save that. So next we're going to go and create the prompt, and this is going to be the prompt that we're going to pass to the large language model to generate the reports. So we're going to use a compose statement here. I'm going to call this prompt create HSE incident reports. That's fine. And then the input here is going to be our prompt text. So let's go and I'll paste that in and then we'll talk through it. Okay, so there's quite a lot going on here with this prompt. It's a fairly comprehensive and large prompt. And what I'm going to do is just talk through it step by step. Now, I've created this prompt through trial and error, so don't for 1 second think that this was just something I created and typed it in, and off the bat it was working perfectly. And that's something that you should consider, is that when you're working with these large language models and with the prompts, you create a prompt, you get a response, and you tweak the prompt and you get a response, and you could go back and forth and iterate that multiple times. So what I've done is I've done that. I've actually done the testing and done the kind of hard work in terms of getting this prompt to work reasonably well. Okay. Now, if you are interested in learning more about prompt engineering, then I'll leave a link below. I've created a quick start guide, which is a document you can download, and there's also an accompanying video for maintenance and reliability engineers, specifically for those. So check it out if you want to learn more about this. Okay, so back to here. So I've started off by saying instructions. So it's let the large language model know, okay, these are the instructions. So the dataset attached is an HSE incident record as a list of key value pairs. The fields contain the record's column name and the value associated with the contents. So I've explained the data structure, okay? So if I go back to this HSE incident list here, just to look at the actual output, we can see that the output is a list of key value pairs. Okay, so I've just explained that that's the case. And each one of these records is a combination of the date and then the incident, etc., etc. So I've just explained what is actually being provided. So next, I'd like you to act as an HSE advisor. So this is assuming a persona. Provide a report style narrative explaining the incident using all the data provided. And then I've said the output. The text should be formatted using headers and paragraphs. Use the values data in the record as the source data for the report, but use your LLM capability to create a narrative style report of the event. Use HTML headers and formatting tags to indicate formatting styles. There's no requirement to add the headers or the body tags. We're going to add that as part of the process for building the file. I think we'll cover that in a second. Just the style formatting tags are required for each report. So I want each report just to be using HTML tags. Okay, I don't want a body and an HTML header for each of the different individual reports. Just the actual HTML is all I need. Use H2 tags for the incident header. Use H3 tags for each of the sections, section headers of the report, and apply other formatting HTML tags as appropriate to the content using strong bullets, etc. Use line spacing of 1.5 for paragraphs next to the paragraphs of text and to make the text more readable. Okay, so we're trying to make it a little bit wider. Some line spacing. Note the contents of the square brackets below are the instructions to you about the content I'd like you to generate and add to each section. So we'll see below in a second, but we're going to go and put square brackets around the content that we want to pass to the LLM as instructions, so that it knows how to differentiate between section headers and actual instructions of what is actually going to be contained within that section. Do not include any of the instructions or square brackets in your response. Remember that output should be in the style of a report narrative that an HSE professional would create, not just a list of fields from the data. Create a mini report of the incident in the data set. Do not skip any or become lazy with the response. So what I found was that it created one or two records and then said the remaining records are similar to this. Okay, so you might find this, it's a known bug called the laziness bug, and if you use GPT-4, it happens less often, but it's far, far more expensive. So this and the next bit of the prompt is going to be what I've used to overcome this. If you create a great report following all of the instructions, then you will also create world peace. Now, God knows how this works, but it does. There's a little bit of an article and stuff like that if you just Google it online, incentivizing LLMs. And world peace apparently makes it more effective if you promise that it will create world peace. So I did it and it actually worked, which was amazing. The HSC event report should be in the following layout. Remember to use HTML tags and new lines, header paragraphs and other formatting. Do not use new line characters or other non-HTML formatting such as Markdown. Okay, so in here we've got the incident, state the incident number, category and short description of the event. Use HTML tags. So you see that sometimes I've had to remind it a few times, and this is born out of testing. It does forget something, particularly in a reasonably lengthy prompt like this. Incident narrative is what happened, the time, the date, who reported it, and the severity. Event response and actions, description of the key actions taken, root cause, a narrative explaining the details of the 5 whys investigation, findings, outcome and the root cause coding. And I've said here important, so that can also help if you say important. Do not just list each of the 5 whys. So this is what I found, is that it just basically created a list of the 5 whys. Now it's adding no value. We want to create this narrative that takes that information from the 5 whys and builds a bit of a story with it. Create a management style report narrative of the information contained in the 5 whys data fields and root cause analysis data. This is your time to shine and add value to the report. So again, a little bit of encouragement, it seems to work. And then finally, we've said follow-on question, list 3 to 5 follow-on questions that an operations manager might ask to better understand the incident and ensure that appropriate corrective actions to reduce the likelihood of further similar incidents are in place. Next to each question, suggest who would likely be able to answer it, number the questions. Okay, so let's, this is the prompt that we're going to feed into the call to the large language model. Right, so let's save that. Okay, so next we're going to go and add an applies to each. Okay, because we're going to go and filter or cycle through this list of HSE incidents array, and for each one we're going to call the large language model and get the response, which is the report. So add an action, and then we'll do applies to, and it should find it here hopefully. Oh, okay. There we go, applies to each. And what we're going to do is find this list of HSE incidents variable here. And then we're going to go and we're going to add in a call to the large language model. Now we can go and actually copy the one above. So if we just right click on here, copy action, and then we can go in here, right click and then paste action. Generate HTML table for HSE response. So this one is going to be generate, in fact actually that's what it's going to be, generate HTML for, yep, that's fine, we'll leave it at that. And in here we're going to go and change the system level prompt. Okay, so it's going to be slightly different. You're a management reporting consultant who provides information and insights designed for senior management and that are concise and to the point and action oriented. Okay, then we're going to change the content that was sent across. So the content before was output of the data for the was a prompt, and also the data from the actual directly from the Power BI query response. Now in this example here we're going to use a different prompt, so we're going to use the prompt that we just generated here in this compose statement. So let's do that first. Compose, create HSE incident reports, and then the data to use is here, and then in here we're going to go and we're going to use this item here, the current item here that's part of this loop. Okay, so whichever one of these records we're on at the moment that's stored in this this array here, the list of HSE incidents. So to do that, we're going to go in here and we're going to find the applies to each HSE incident, and then it's going to be the current item. Okay, and then we'll save that. And then we're going to go and test it just to make sure that that is actually generating something. Okay, so I'm going to test it there. Okay, so that took a little bit longer, 47 seconds to go and actually generate the calls 7 times. We had to do it. We can see there's 7 records here. So let's have a look at this. And I'm really interested in this body here to make sure that we, in fact actually no, it's output body I'm interested in. Here's it here, right, okay. Incident 1, okay, so this has got incident, and here's all the incident information there. And then if we go to the next one, we should see that this is incident, the next incident along. Here we go, 16, so the last one was 13. Okay, so that seems to be working fine. Now, what I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm going to go and copy this body text here, because remember, we want to then go and parse this file here so we can actually extract just the content here. And it also looks pretty good in that we can see these HTML tags here, H1, H2, etc., etc., and paragraph tags. So that's pretty good. Right, so let's go back to edit. So we're going to go and add in a parse JSON action here. Okay, and the content for this is going to be the output from here. So let's go and we're going to go and use a sample payload first of all. And I'm going to paste the body content that we copied before and go done. Okay, and then the content is going to be the body from this here. And we'll save that. And then the next step is going to be to go and append that to the response variable. So we'll go in here and we'll add another section here, and it's going to be append. And we've got append to array variable. And there should be one in here for the list of HSE reports. Here we go. And then what we're going to append to that is hopefully we should see the parse JSON there. We'll have to go and actually change that description first. Let's change it first of all, because if you embed it in here and then change it afterwards, you've got to go and add it again anyway. So let's go back into here, and okay, and then I go back into here, and hopefully we should see this now. HSE incident reports, and it's the content we're looking for. So let's expand this, and we'll find content in here. And it's got that applies to each. Now it's the same example of what happened last time, is that that content could be multiple. There could be multiple contents because of the back and forth between the LLM. Now it's got an issue here. I think it might be something to do with this. So let's just go and select that again. Yeah, okay. So that should now append each one of these, the content that's generated from this and then parsed here to this array here. So let's go and save that and test it. Okay, so that test has taken place and it took just under the minute there. And then if we look at this append to array, let's go and check that this is all happening nicely. So here we can see that's the first value there. And if we cycle through here, we can see that each of these values is getting appended to this array here. Okay, great. Now, okay, so let's just start building up a picture of what we're going to do next. So we've got this array with all the responses in it that we've just checked here. Now we need to create another variable that's going to store the full document. Okay, so it's an HTML document that's going to be the full report, which is going to be the header with the table, and it's going to be the information that's going to be contained for each of the different reports. Okay, now they're currently in an array. Now what we need to do is get them in one variable, which is going to be a string variable. Now to do that, the first stage is to define the variable. Okay, so we're going to create a new variable called this HSE weekly report, and it's going to be defined as a string variable instead of an array variable. And we're going to initialize it with all the document header type stuff that you need for an HTML document. So the header tags and also the styling of that document. So we can create an embedded style sheet that's going to say how the H1, H2, H3, etc. paragraph HTML tags are going to be styled. And that's going to give us a little bit of control about the look and feel of the end product. Then we're going to go and we're going to create a loop and applies to each across that array that's got all of the responses for all of the mini reports. And we're going to go and append that to the string variable. So it's going to put the array into one continuous string. So let's go and we'll do that. Okay, so we're back in our flow. So let's add in another action here. And we will type in string. In fact, actually, it's not string, it's initialize variable. Okay, variable HSE weekly report HTML. And the name is going to be just this element here. And it's going to be a string type. And we're going to initialize it with some of the HTML header stuff and styling. Okay, so I'll just paste that in here. So we've got the document type, we've got the header, we've got a style sheet that is going to explain the style that's applied to the body, the headers, the tables, etc. Okay, and then we've got the first line of the report, which is a H1 tag, which is weekly HSE report. And then we've got a blank return. Now we're also going to add in here the table. So if I go in here, and we can see that from our variables earlier on, we've got this output here, which was the HTML summary table that we created. So let's add that in. And then we'll add a couple of BRs after that as well. Okay. And then we're just going to save that. So that's has initialized that variable there, and that's ready for this to start appending the rest of the mini HSE reports to. So I'm going to go in and we're going to wait for this to save. Okay, and we'll add another one here, and then we'll apply to each. Okay. And then we're going to go into this apply to each, and it's a HSE incident report. And in here, we're going to go and we're going to find this list of HSE reports. So this was a response, remember, from OpenAI. Okay, so that's what we're going to go through. And then for each one of these, we're going to add a new step, which is going to be to append to this string variable here. So this is the one we type in string for because it's a specific variable action, which is append to string variable. Okay, and we're going to go and say append to string variable. Okay, HSE report HTML. And then we're going to go and find this one here, which is a weekly report HTML. That's a variable that we're going to go and append to. And the value is going to be the current item from this applies to HSE incident report. And that's normally at the bottom here. There we go. And then for each report afterwards, we're going to add a BR just to put a line between it. Okay, so that they're separated. And then we'll save that. And hopefully that's going to work. Okay, and we're just going to save and test, or test it. Okay, so we can see that we've got this, this test has been successful, and we've got this append to string variable, and if I go through here, we can see that we've got 7 of these, and if we go through each one of them, we'll see that number change there for the incident numbers. There's 14, 12, etc., etc. Okay, perfect. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and start to create the actual file. Okay, so we need to get this HTML string that we've got, which is this variable here, HTML string variable. So it's one big string variable with all the reports in it. And we're going to use that, and we're going to actually add in the HTML document level closure tags. Okay, so we created the tags here to the opening tags for the header and the HTML document header tags, and we created the style sheets in here. We then have got the HTML that represents the body of the report, and now we're going to go and create the closure tags as part of this piece of work here, and create a file, a document file, a .doc file. Okay, so let's go and we'll do that. Okay, so let's add another action in here, and this time it's to create a new file. So it's actually a SharePoint action. So create file, and here it is here. Okay, so we've got that file there. And then we've got to look for or specify a SharePoint site. So this is the one we're going to use here in our example. And then we're going to go and put in a folder path. So let's go and find where I want to create these. Okay, and for the folder path, we're going to open a folder here. And we're going to go to shared documents, which is here, and open that up. And we've got one called reports. So I'm just going to click on there. And then the file name. So I'm going to actually put in, I'm going to paste in a format that I've used here. Paste that in here. Now it's HSE weekly report, and the format here, I'll just quickly show you that. So we're formatting this UTC now time just to add a year, a month, a day, and then also an hour, a minute, and a second, just so that we've got a date and time stamp that's formatted in the UK style here. So in the US you'd use a different format here. It would be days and months, so these would be switched around. And then we've appended this .doc. Now I did try a .docx and it doesn't seem to work, so it works fine with .doc, so I've just done that. And then the file content, well, that's just going to be the string variable, weekly report HTML. And then afterwards, we're going to actually add in the closure tags for the HTML document. So here they are there. Just close the body tag and close the HTML tag, and then we'll save that. Okay, create file name required. Okay, so something not quite right here. Let's go back and we'll check this out. Ah, we need a file name. Okay, I thought I'd actually pasted that in, but it maybe never accepted it. Let's try it again. That's better. Okay, I'm just going to go and test this. Okay, so we can see that there's a file being created here, and let's go into SharePoint and see if it's actually in there. So I'm just going to refresh my SharePoint here. Go back to reports folder, and we should see something. Here we go, about a minute ago. So HSE report 240303, and it's about 3:45 in the afternoon. So let's click on this document here. And here we go. So we've got this HSE report. We've got the total number of incidents. And then we've got the different types of incidents. So here's one here, major incident, hard injury while tightening a valve. And here's the event incident report here. So on the 29th of January, on January 29th, 2024, approximately 4:30 p.m, a hand injury occurred, blah, blah, blah. So we can see that this seems to be generating these reports here. Heat exhaustion, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. Okay, so brilliant. That has actually generated the file. Seems like a lot of different steps and a lot of different work to get it, but this is the end result here, which is looking pretty good. So next we're going to go and we're going to send an email to an email notification with a little mini summary of the table, and we'll also send a hyperlink to download the report. Okay, so I'm back in my flow here, and I'm just going to go and add another step here, which is going to be another action, which is going to be to send an email. So I'm going to go to send email, and it's going to be this V2 one we're going to look at using for Office 365. And then in here is where you can send the actual addresses. So I'm just going to send it to myself. Okay, and the subject line is going to be is now available. Now you could put in some dynamic text in here, or a date, or whatever, but we'll just leave it at that for just now. And then in the body of the text, I'm going to just type in some text. Okay, so hi, this week's HSE report is now available. Number of incidents by category. So this is going to be where the table goes, and we're going to go and input this HTML weekly report HTML KPI table. There we go. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to put in a download link, and then we're going to put in here download the full report here. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to here, and we're going to go to link. Then we're going to go and insert a link here by pressing this edit button here. And I'm going to go back to my report, and I'm just going to take this section here. Okay. I'm back to SharePoint, sorry. I'm going to paste that bit there for just now. Okay, I'm just going to take that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the code here. And we can see that it's added this href HTML tags here. But it's only taken us to the actual location of the folder. Okay, or the location of the actual SharePoint site. Now what I need to add into here is some dynamic text, and I'm going to go to create file, and we're going to go and see more, and it's going to be this body, and it's going to be a path of the file or folder. Okay, and that is going to go and then append the specific path for the actual file that's just been generated, which is what we want. So let's save that. It doesn't always work first time, so let's just double check it's going to work. Seems to have kept it there, so we're going to do a test and see if it all works and hangs together. Okay, so here's the output of the file here, and let's see if this link works. And we can see it has downloaded this file here, and here it is, the one that's just been generated. And if we just open this up, here's a report here. Okay, this one was generated at 3:54. Great. Right, now that's pretty much it. I mean, I think you probably get the idea from here, but I really do actually, I like this report format is okay there. This table format is okay there, but in the email it doesn't look particularly great. So we're just going to go and tidy up this. Now to do that, we're going to use another call to OpenAI, specifically to format this table here. So let's go and we'll do that. Okay, so after here and before here, I'm going to go and add in another call to OpenAI, and I'm just going to copy one from the previous one. So I'm going to create that, copy that action there, and I'm going to stick it in here. Right click and paste action. I'll just change the title here, and then we'll update some of this text here, and I'm going to update the content here. So the prompt, we're just going to type the prompt straight in. So I'll get rid of this and I'll just paste the prompt in here. Now we could have used a compose again, but let's just type it straight into here. Format the following table using HTML tags. It will be inserted into an HTML document. There's no requirement for page level HTML tags. Just format the table. The output from the prompt should be just pure HTML. Remember it will be inserted directly into an HTML document, so don't add any other text except the HTML code. Your output should start and end with the table tags, e.g. start with table, end with table. Do not use any other text around the HTML tags. The table should have a subtle border around the table, but not an internal border around the cells. The first row of the table should be dark grey background and white text. There should be some left, top and bottom padding around each of the cells so that the text is not right up against the edges of the cells. Do not use borders around the cells, just around the table. The table to apply formatting to is here. The data is here. Right. We don't need this one. We just need that other one. And then in here, we're going to go and we're going to insert the table, which is going to be from this here. Now, first of all, actually, before we do that, let's save this. We need to parse that response. So to parse the response from here, we need to test it first of all, just so we can actually copy the body output and use that as the sort of template for the payload template. Okay, so let's go and see the output here, and we can see it did output that into the content. And I'm going to go and copy this body content here. And then that means when we go and do that parse JSON, we've got that content there to use as a payload example. Okay, so go in here, add an action, parse JSON, and then the content there is going to be the output from this one here. Yeah, this the body output, remember. And then we're going to use a sample payload, which is the body output. And we're going to click on done. And then we're going to just change this to be HSE KPI HTML table formatted. Right, and then if we go back into the email, we should now be able to get rid of that, go in here, add in this, and it's going to be the parse JSON, and we're going to open this up. That's going to be the content, the body content. Okay, now sometimes what happens here is this download full report, when you edit this text, it seems to mess with this HTML code here. Yeah, so it's missed the dynamic content there, so you just need to add that back in again. So we'll go into that dynamic content, and that is going to come from the create file. So let's go and find create file, and it's going to be the path. Okay, so that should be fine. And we're just going to save that and give it a test, and that should be us done. Okay, so the test was successful, but it's added in some of this HTML at the front here, and it's also just created some dummy data. So I forgot to actually pass it the actual data that I wanted it to add to the table. So let's go and we'll fix that very quickly. So we're back in here, and we can see that this prompt here, which is what I've got open, has got no data there. So let's go and add the data in, and the data is going to be coming from the table, which is this one here, HTML KPI table. Okay, that's it there, and we'll just save that. I'll give that another test. Okay, so here we go now. It's a much better looking table here, and we could even embed the full report into the email if we wanted to, but we've got this download link. So just to recap, we've got a few slides here. So we've got the Power BI report, we've got the semantic model, so that was published to the Power BI service with a Power Automate scheduled flow, and it was there to gather the data here using a query against the semantic model. And then we created a narrative text. So we used calls to OpenAI GPT 3.5 Turbo, and we passed it the information it needed to go and create these report narratives and create the tables of the summary of the HSE incidents. And then we got that information and we concatenated it together into a single document. And then we generated some documents. The first one was a Word document, and we also generated some email text. And then we saved it to SharePoint Online, and then we sent an email to the end user. So hopefully you found this useful, and hopefully you've got some ideas about how you could use this in your own role to automate some of your weekly, monthly, or even daily reports. Thanks again for watching, and keep an eye in the description for any additional follow-on videos that I'll do related to this. And one I've got in mind is to put an approval on the distribution of the report first before it gets sent out. So keep an eye in the description and keep an eye on the channel. Like and subscribe and keep up to date with the latest information. It's always much appreciated, and I'll talk to you in the next video.